Oh, hey, hi on Instagram. Good to see you. Let's go.
Okay. Counting. In 5, 4, 3, 2.
Hello and welcome to Age of Learning's second ever webinar on getting your kid ready for the first year of school, whether that's TK or kindergarten. My name is Robert Kalinowski, PhD. I'm head of design research and consumer insights here. And besides being an expert in digital things and productization and everything I do here, I'm also expert in the way that kids develop cognitively and socially, especially in the early school years, and especially as it pertains to media and the context of the family and the preschool and the school. So I think I'm the right person for you to talk to. Now, you and I together, we have 5 months to go. So 5 months until we send our little one off to school for the first time. And for those of you who are joining for the first time this week, I'm doing it too, right? So I have a 4-year-old. She just turned 4 not too long ago, and she will be going to a TK for the first time in August, so 5 months from now, just about 5 months and a week. And yeah, it's a huge transition. There's a lot of things to be anxious about. But what I would encourage you to do if you are feeling anxious about this is just take a deep breath with me. You're a fellow parent. And you're in the right place. You're here now. You're getting something ticked off your list of helping your kid get ready for school. And today, of course, we're going to go through concrete tips that you can do between now and when school starts that are really going to help your kid out. But I think the most concrete thing I can give you is just this bit of wisdom and knowledge from my field, from this field of social science as pertains to the development of children, which is to just relax. Just relax. You know, your kid is already counting and doing addition. Your kid isn't able to identify numbers. It's okay. TK and kindergarten, they are designed to accept every kind of kid, right? And the action will be there for every kid. Every kid is going to get something out of it, and it's going to be okay. So, first thing I want to say is this is a conversation. So I want to know from you, what is it that you're worried about? Why are you here? What do you want a tip about? And I would also love to hear about your notions. You know, one of the things that I do in my work is I study preconceived notions, what we might call scientific misperceptions or misconceptions. And I think about how these arose, how strong they are, and what we can do to communicate with them and to sort of get people on the right page. So I'd love to know, what are you worried about? What is your conception of what your kid needs to be able to do, of how your kid should be able to act by now? I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear everything about you. So, I also want to know how many kids you have, how many kids in the preschool are getting ready for school age. I'd love to know where you're at, and just, features of your life. I can tell you for me, I'm raising a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. I work, my wife works, and we got nobody else. So we don't have a mom-in-law, friendly neighbor, nanny, none of that. We do send our kids to daycare because we have to, and everything else we're just slogging it alone. So yes, I am ankle deep in toys, diapers, and laundry every day of my life. That's my life. But I'd love to hear what your experience is as a parent and raising kids. So here's what we're going to do today. We are going to cover some of the things that I hear about most in your comments and also just through the years, looking back at customer feedback for users of ABCmouse. What people want to know, generally speaking, first place is literacy, something to do with literacy. How do I get my kid to learn the alphabet? How do I get my kid to learn to read? How do I get my kid to learn to do sounds, sight words, phonics, that kind of thing? That whole body of questions, that's number one. That's what people want to know most. And then second place is numeracy. Some people want to know, how do I get my kid ready to learn math, or how do I get them better at math? And then the third thing that tends to be these sort of social emotional disciplines, questions around how do I get my kid to behave in a certain way? And certainly at this time of year, the big question is, how do I get my kid ready for school so that they know what to expect, so that they're able to show up and go to school and be ready to learn? So I'm going to cover just a quick tip on those three things. I'm then going to turn to digital tools and see how we can use digital tools. Look, you can't fool me, okay? I study this for a living. I know that all of your kids are on screens. It's okay. You don't need to be ashamed about that. We all use screens. But I'm going to show you how you might use this screen time for good to get your kid ready and to be nurturing and help to build a whole healthy child. And then after that, we're going to go to your questions. And I'm going to try to answer every question that comes through. So get your questions on there. I'm sure some of them will overlap, but we'll try to get to every one of them. And then I'll see you the next time after that. So let's get into it. Number 1, literacy. So I shared last time the number 1 thing that you can do to get your kid not just ready to learn in TK or kindergarten, but for life, is to build a social connection, this warm cultural heritage with books. Number 1 thing any parent can do is read with your child. I'm absurdly busy. I'm really in the zero-sum game stage of life. I can't do anything without giving up something else. So time for me and for my wife is really constrained. But one thing that we do make time for is we do read to our kids every night. So what does this do? Well, it builds with them a positive association with reading, with books, with adult interaction. And guess what? That's what they're going to be doing at TK and kindergarten. They're going to be having interactions with adults. There's going to be a lot of books around. You want to prepare them for that by reading with your kid. And you can extend this outside of the bedtime ritual as well. Maybe once every couple of weeks, you can make a trip to your local library. But folks in the comments last time were saying, okay, what can I do beyond that? Because I figure a lot of you are already reading to your kids daily, and I want to hear it. So let me know if you are or not. I would love to hear it. And there's no shame here. This is a shame and guilt-free space, okay? But some were commenting like, yeah, I already do that. What can I do beyond that? Sure, I'll let you know. So one thing you can do beyond that is start with, once you have letter identification down, if you have that down, again, no rush, but if you do and you want to go farther, you can start to do reading of very short words. Great words to start with are like a, an, and it. And in this way, what you're doing is you're pointing to something very abstract. It's just a shape on a page. It's a squiggly shape on a page. And you're then starting to form that connection of, hey kid, you just read this word, a. That's a word, a. It means one thing, a. And you can flip through the book and have them point out the single word a. If they find an a that's within another word, you can say, that's right, that is an a, but that's not the word a. There has to be a space on either side. And think about all of the things that you're teaching your child during this exercise. You're reinforcing letter identification. Because you're looking through books, you're looking through all different font types. And that is a point of confusion for kids. An A, especially between uppercase and lowercase, can look like 100 different things. An A can look like 100 different things. And you're also teaching them, what these spaces mean. The spaces go between words. So something very simple like that is nonetheless building a very powerful foundation for learning to read. Write back to me. Let me know if you've tried an exercise like that. And I'd also love to know what your favorite activities are. I could sit here for 20 hours going over different early literacy activities. But I don't think anyone wants that. So let me know if you've ever tried that one, and if you have some other favorites that you'd like to do. Okay, let's move on to numeracy. So numeracy is a second place, but yet I still see that some second place concern, right? But I do see that some parents are concerned about it, and they're like, well, my kid only knows how to count the numbers. They know how to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but they don't know how to reliably count 5 objects or give me 5 objects. So the development of math cognition, numeric cognition, is one of my specialties. And I can tell you that the development of this kind of mental ability is profoundly complex, and it develops with the developing child. And I can't emphasize that enough. Human development is not automatic. It doesn't happen overnight. You can, with great effort, get a 2-year-old to identify square numbers and square roots, but I would argue that's not a great use of your time. And of course, most 2-year-olds are not going to be able to do it anyway. So work alongside your child's natural development. If they are not ready to be doing math right now, your kid's 4, maybe 5. It's okay. It's okay. Kindergarten environments are designed to help with this thing. Kinder, first, second grade, they will pick up these skills. So if your child isn't doing them right now, my number one advice to you is actually don't push it, because then you might start to build a negative association between instructional content and your kid's feelings, right? You don't want that. And then the other thing is your child will develop and grow and they'll learn later. And it's funny like how few early childhood educators know this. And I mean like your teacher, your preschool teacher, your kindergarten teacher. It's surprising how few administrators know this, school administrators, how few people with an MAT, with an Ed.D. know this. But the truth is that there are entire societies that achieve 100% literacy in multiple languages, and they don't try to teach their kids to learn to read when they're 5. There are entire societies where, by adulthood, everyone has a very high level of math proficiency, higher even than the United States, and yet they're not trying to teach numeracy this young. So the point I'm trying to convey to you is, it ain't necessarily so. A lot of these milestones are not natural, but rather socially constructed. And remember, the goal, I hope you know this, the goal is not for your 5-year-old to be doing addition, right? It's your child. The goal is for them to have a fantastic childhood, a wonderful development, a great relationship with you for their whole lives. And from a human capital development standpoint, this is like a more an econometric standpoint, the goal is for them to develop into the workforce of the future, right? Well, I can tell you, there are societies that don't do it our way, and they still develop expert people for their workforces. Right? So take a deep breath. You're doing okay. But that said, let's say your kid is interested in math. What can you do? Well, you can incorporate it into reading time. So with my 2-year-old, we were reading this book. It's called Alexander Girard, Color. Here's the cover of it. And I didn't ask her to do this, but we flipped to this page. We flip to this page, and you can see that there's a 4-leaf clover here, right?
Just so you know, it's a green.
Oh, it's green.
On the green screen.
Oh, all right. Listen, so I heard that the clover is green on green screen, so I'm going to flip to another page. The book is about color, go figure. How about this one? Is this showing up?
Yes.
All right, cool. You might be getting some of like the book background in the eyeballs here. I don't know. Anyway, so we turned to a page like this, and my 2-year-old started counting like this. 1, 2, 3. So she was connecting counting with a motion of grabbing. But then she just kept going. So she would say 1, 2, 3, 4. Now there are 3 pairs of eyes here, not 4, and there were 4 clovers. My daughter kept counting to 5. And that's kind of how math development goes. It's subtle, it's deep, it develops over time. So I did the right thing, which I said, yes, that's right, 5. There's no reason to correct my 2-year-old at this time. If you're 4-year-old or 5-year-old, maybe they're further along and they want to be corrected, and that's fine too. But one way that you can develop numeracy is by folding it into your other activities you're already doing, like reading books. I mentioned last week also things like putting groceries away from the store. You can pull out the fruit, and count them one by one so that kids get that one-to-one correspondence. So lesser point, there are these activities you can do. Bigger point is don't worry so much about it, because Kinder is designed to teach these kinds of skills. And I could go much more into that hidden knowledge. I think I'll save some of it for later. But just the main point I want to get across is that these findings that I'm talking to you about are very, very robust. So people who study the development of early numeracy and math skills in this broad, socially contextualized way, we all know this. And interestingly, it's not crossing over into early learning environments, meaning people who design your kid's school. Maybe one day, but today it's not. So you and I are kind of in on the inside track for now. Okay, finally, third point I want to address, and then we're going to turn to some digital solutions. Third point I want to address is, in my view, probably the biggest one, which is, what if your kid's just not emotionally ready to go to school? What if you bring your kid to school and they cry and scream and have this traumatic event? And my answer to that is, yeah, that's going to happen. That is going to happen. So many of you who are watching here, many people who are worried about that, that does indeed happen. And that seems to be just part of the experience. Some kids will experience that, some kids won't. Obviously, the transition is easier for those who are coming from a school-like environment. And I'm not even saying that that's good, right? I'm not saying put your kid in a school environment now so that the transition will be easier. I'm simply pointing out that, of course, it's a hard transition. So what do you do about it? Well, you make it fun. You make it fun. You can read books or watch videos about going to school for the first time. You can make believe and play school, like maybe you're the teacher and your kid is the student, or flip. Maybe your kid gets to be the teacher and you're the student. And then there's other things that you can do to create a concrete bond, a real tangible bond between your home environment and your kid's school environment. What do I mean by that? I mean your water bottle and your Snuggie, the little stuffed blankie or toy that your kid brings to school, right? So here's an activity that you can do at home. Go shopping for the bottle, or if your kid already has their favorite bottle, like their water bottle, right, that's the one. And make a big deal out of making a label for it. Make the label together with your kid. What's this label for? It's for when we take your water bottle to school, because you're going to start school in 5 months. Why do I need the label? Oh, could I get the point back on there, Producer Kate? Thank you. Why do I need the label? Well, you need the label because there's a lot of other kids there. And you know what? Someone might have the same looking water bottle as you. So make that label with your kid. Put the label on their Snuggie and on their water bottle. And then you can pretend you're coming in through the door of your house, right? Or the door of a kid's room, and put them in a cubby. Because that's an activity that kids do early on at the beginning of the school day every day. So by having the label, the fun, the warmth, the joy there in the home, you're helping to ease that transition when they start school in 5 months. What I would say is if this is something you're concerned about, to do this activity and to do it a lot. Get into this habit of playing school, of having your water bottle with the label on it, and make it into this fun, warm game. Your kid still might have a meltdown that first day of school, but at least it will give them, a little bit better of a chance. Okay, so we covered some literacy tips, numeracy tips. We talked about an activity you can do to get your kid ready to go from school. Send me your comments and questions. I would love to hear another activity that you might use or one you have a question about. For now, let's move on to looking at a digital solution. So I'm going to take a look here at some activities you can do with ABCmouse to help with literacy and numeracy. Let me just get my earpiece ready here. All right. So I'm going to start playing this. You guys should see it on your end. Now, why am I sharing this digital tool with you? Well, like I mentioned earlier, I don't know about you, but I am completely overmax taxed for time and energy as a parent. And my kids do spend time on screens. But when they're spending time on screens, I don't want them to be on YouTube Kids. Because YouTube Kids, it actually makes it really hard for me to control what they do and don't see. If I subscribe to a channel I trust, like Sesame Street, nonetheless, there might be one video that I don't think is appropriate for them, but it's really, really hard for me to block that video. So I use these tools because I know everything there is safe and appropriate. I know there's no way that they can leave the app once they're in it. I know there's no way someone can communicate with them through it, So for me, this is like the most trustworthy thing that I can do with my kids, and I know the activities are great. So let's talk about some of these activities. Here we go. Let's see what's first.
Zoo alphabet pop and peek. A to H.
Oh, I'm getting
Start by
signal to
popping
unplug
every
and plug it
balloon
back in
with
again. All right, let's do it. Unplug. Blow it. Shake, shake, shake. Let's see if that works. How we doing? Play?
D.
Good?
Now
All right,
pop
let's start
every
again. So here we go. So here's one activity
Zoo
in
alphabet pop and peek. A to H. Start by popping every balloon with the letter D.
So this is pop and peek, and it's great for letter identification.
With the letter F.
You hear the voiceover say, pop every balloon with a D, and then the voiceover will switch so that your kid is challenged to identify different letters. I want you to notice that these are really big, obvious capital letters, right? There's other ones where you can get lowercase letters as well to get them used to the different case and different fonts. When you saw them pop, that's your kid's finger actually tapping on them. It reveals the picture, flamingos, with the F, and then the prize meter boosts up. So I'm going to pause it for a moment. So that's one activity where it is highly engaging, highly interactive, and it reinforces letter identification skills. For me, this is just kind of like a no-brainer, one of the very best digital activities you can do with your kid. Again, pop and peek. You can go into your ABCmouse and search for the activity, or you can see it there among the literacy activities. All right, so let's look at another one. This one has to do with math.
Choose more than the other.
You like that pun? Chew, chew, choose. You like that? I thought of that myself. I didn't really, somebody else did. So you see the train come in, you'll see two cars, and your kid is faced with these two cars.
Choose the train car that has more than the other.
You hear the voiceover. It tells them, choose the one that has one more than the other. I want you to notice something.
Good job.
In this one, both of the train cars have balloons. So the kid is being asked to compare two quantities of the same type.
Choose the train car that has more than the other.
Here's another one. This one, it's buckets of popcorn. Again, these are the exact same one, meaning everything there is a bucket of popcorn. And then look at this. So this again, to you and I, it doesn't seem like much because we're so used to it. But to a kid, this is a deep and subtle concept to get. One of them is hats and one of them is hoops. And yet still, they both have quantity and one is more than the other. Then it goes back to that they're all the same type beach balls.
Great choo-choo choice.
You might notice they're also all circus themed. And then here, mixing it again, unicycles versus the platform that the lion jumps on or whatever.
Nice choice.
The sparkle animation happens when your kid taps the screen. And then you see the train go out of sight. Bye, circus train.
See you on the next train.
That last mouse is Do Re Mi. That one's my favorite. Yay, reward screen. Closer to a prize, yay. And I'm gonna show you one more here.
Zoo Bridge Builder. Letters J to R.
Zoo Bridge Builder. Letters J to R. See the animal animation?
Tap every letter tile to build a bridge.
J. Jaguar.
And your kid is asked to tap every letter tile to build a bridge. Now here's what's key. When you see that poof animation, that's the kid tapping it, right? They have to tap each one individually in order left to right.
Monkey.
And you might be asking like, my 1-year-old can do that, so what? Like, what is this about?
New.
Well, what it does is it teaches kids that you read left to right.
Oh.
It teaches kids that each of these letters is distinct, and then it stops and it adds some kind of meaning to that letter after each push. The reason why this is so relevant is that in developing your knowledge over the alphabet, one of the earlier stages is you just sing the alphabet, right? Your kid can probably sing the alphabet. But your kid might not know that L, M, N, O, and P are all different letters. Maybe your kid has even asked you, what's an LMNO? What's an elemento? Because the way the alphabet song goes is that all of those run together. This helps them to separate it. So you built the bridge. There's your animals.
Whoopee!
Whoopee!
Nice
Reward
work.
screen. And that's it. So there you have just an example of 3 digital activities that really help to reinforce these kinds of things we've been talking about. I also want to point out one more thing. Did you see what Q was for? Q is for qual. That's another thing I really like about these digital tools is that maybe even more than they build worldly knowledge. So worldly knowledge, just like knowing about the world, is an important part about developing cognitive abilities, and it should not be overlooked. One of the reasons why it's great to read to kids is because they build worldly knowledge. They learn about the contents that's in the book, whether it's purely fiction and fantasy or whether it's nonfiction, doesn't matter. You're still learning about the world. And what I love about these activities, especially that bridge builder one, is Q is for qual. Quoll. It's a small marsupial. It's a small carnivorous marsupial. It looks like a pointy-faced gerbil, maybe? It's a funny critter. You should look it up. But your kid will learn about a qual. All right, so now we are at that time. Let's take some of your questions. Thank you, Producer Kate. I don't know if you saw, but Producer Kate and everyone in the studio today is wearing a mask because I have a bad cough. So thank you to the studio team for being here. And I don't think I can transfer the cough to you, so I think you guys are okay. All right, so, great question. So I have this question from a viewer. It says, how can I identify my child's learning style and best support it at home? That's great. 2 things. One is that while the term learning style has been thrown about a lot, from the standpoint of cognitive science, usually it's used as a misnomer or a misconception. I'll give you an example. You might say, like, I'm a visual learner. Actually, everyone's a visual learner, everybody. I'm an auditory learner. Now, everybody's an auditory learner. Everyone will learn a piece of content better if there's a visual and auditory component as compared to just reading text. So that's not a learning style per se, that's more of like a modality. So all kids and all adults will learn better if learning is more enriched, right? So how do you best support it? Well, if you're talking about best supporting your child's individual difference at home, what you do is you follow what they are motivated to learn. I'll give you a great example. In my time, I've done a lot of ethnographic work. I've been been so fortunate. I've been in homes with families with young kids across the United States and even abroad. I spent a few weeks living with a Quechua-speaking family in a remote area of the Andes. So I've been around and I've seen the ways a lot of families raise their kids. In the United States, I was doing some ethnographic work with a boy who was obsessed with toy cars. He had just turned 3. He was pre-verbal, so he wasn't really speaking yet. But man, this guy loved cars. And as soon as I came into his home, he was so excited to see me, and he wanted to show off his toy collection of hundreds upon hundreds of cars. And I wasn't there for a learning intervention. I was just there to observe, to build my scientific body of work. But in so doing, there were so many learning opportunities with cars. So I also witnessed while I was there, he would go to YouTube and would find these like really cheaply produced YouTube videos of little cars going down ramps, right? But these really cheaply produced videos were about cars, so we watched them. And also they taught basic skills, like they taught counting and colors. So in that way, he was able to learn by following his off-screen interests, by following his non-academic interests, if I could say that. And I would say that's great advice for all of us. So if your kid is into unicorns, that's your entry point. U is for unicorn. Get books about unicorns. Count unicorns. Follow your child's primary interest. All right, next question. Can you recommend strategies to manage separation anxiety at school drop-off? Wow, that one is so hard. And just to be real with you, there's no way to completely solve for that problem. I would say that if your child has that anxiety, in a sense, that's good and natural. That means that they have a strong bond with you and they're going to be stressed without you. That's not something to be so upset about. They have that great primary bond. That's good. But on the other hand, you don't want your kid to be so stressed out. So we talked earlier during this webinar about the thing with the bottle and the Snuggie and sending them to school with it and playing school. Another thing you could do is read books about the first day of school. So one that I really love and recommend is called School's First Day of School. Fantastic illustrated story from the school's point of view. But if you go to your local library and you ask the librarian, hey, what books can I get for my kid about the first day of school, she's going to have some great recommendations for you. So I strongly recommend you check out those books, read them with your kid, and play school as a make-believe game at home. Next one, what activities can help my child's fine and gross motor skills? Oh man, that's the best. That's the best. I love it because this is the one that's fun for you. So again, you want to follow your kid's interest, but in my house, I don't know why, like they love painting. I think they love painting because it's the messiest one and the most work for me. But painting is a great way to build fine motor skills. The one that I recommend is just blank paper, right? Oh, here's a little hack for you. If your kids are young enough, they won't notice. If you want to avoid the mess, use construction paper, and instead of paint, just use water. Because the water shows up nicely on construction paper and it doesn't make a mess. Can't fool the older kids with that though. But lean into those activities that your kids are most interested in. So at my house, they're interested in painting, so watercolors. Obviously, any kind of coloring with crayons or markers is great. We also use like whiteboards and blackboards, so chalk. Sidewalk chalk is a great one. Blocks are fantastic. If you want to go one level up from blocks with needing, especially fine-tuned skills, you might go with Duplos. Duplos are like the big chunky Legos. There's also a brand called Mega Blocks with a huge, they've got huge pips on top of the blocks, so even like a really young child can manage that. So I would say start with the easier ones, the ones that are easier to manipulate, and then graduate higher as your kid has interest and wants to develop. I know some 5-year-olds are like Lego masters. My kids are not. But following that from very simple blocks up to more sophisticated blocks is one great way to go. Okay, let me take a sip of water here. Oh, thank you for asking this. How do I get my kid ready to handle feedback from a teacher or other authority figure? This is such a good question. And you know me, like I'm the big picture thinker. So I know that you're asking a very concrete question here, but I'm going to give you the wider lens on this. Since the 90s, we have tremendously academicized the early learning environment. Preschool, kindergarten, first grade. Kindergarten is German. It means child garden. And in Europe, it very much is that. It's kids running around a yard with chickens, and there's a guy playing a zither. And the activities are like, oh wow, that's where eggs come from. They plant in a garden. They grow their own vegetables. The best food in the country goes to feed these kids at these in the early grades and in early childhood centers. That's what kindergarten is supposed to be. So the first thing that I want to point out is maybe what we're doing as a society is we're trying to force kids' behavior into the world as we've constructed it, versus building a world that's best for child development. And here's some real secret knowledge. I'm not going to go too deep into it because, again, it could take an hour, but I'll just start with this. In recent high-quality randomized controlled trials of high-quality preschool interventions, what they see is that the benefit versus the control group, the benefit right out of these interventions, so going into kindergarten, is smaller than it used to be. In part because the counterfactual condition got much better. We're just much better at parenting and enriching environments at home, right? So the advantage is much smaller, and then it fades out within a couple years. It's a lot to wrap your mind around, so I'll just put it this way. We've made preschool and kindergarten very academic, right? So that seems to be the main skills that we're investing in. But if you follow development, it's actually easier to get those skills later in life. So the folks who aren't getting that enriched early childhood stuff, they're catching up and everyone's just fine, right? So that's my first answer, is that why don't we approach this with some caution? If your kid gets feedback from the teacher, maybe your kid actually didn't do anything wrong. Maybe your kid is just being a kid, and maybe the environment isn't really suited to them. What I do, and I do this, so I'm not saying like what I advise to you. What I do is when my kid gets feedback like that, I reassure my child that I love her in every possible way. And I listen to her story, and I do active listening, which means I reflect back her feelings, and I make her feel better. But I'm not trying to correct my child's behavior so that she fits this unnatural model, this unnatural expectation of how she should behave. Maybe not the answer you were expecting, huh? Okay, my kid doesn't always express their needs clearly. How do I get them ready to communicate with a teacher who will have other kids to deal with? Great question. So we have 5 months to go. This is the one you should spend your time on. This is the one. My kid doesn't always express their needs clearly. How do I get them ready to communicate with a teacher who will have other kids to deal with? Getting your kid to work well in this environment where there's few teachers, more kids, that really is the area where you could see the most bang for your buck over the next 5 months. So you want to play school. You want to ask them to ask for help. You know, it's your kid. You guys have this like nonverbal communication. You can read each other's minds. Next time your kid needs something from you, have them stop and ask for it, right? So your kid might say, milk. Cool, maybe that's your, or they might just like show you some kind of hand signal or something. Whatever it is, stop at that moment and ask your kid, can you say, excuse me, please, can I have some milk? Or when they need to go to the potty, tell your kid at this moment, say, excuse me, I need to use the potty, please. Reinforce over and over and over again your kid making noise, getting attention, and asking for something in a full sentence. And that's going to make your kindergarten teacher's life way easier. It's going to make the whole classroom environment easier. That's really a great way to invest your time. So play the here's how to ask a question game all the time throughout the day. You know, I want to keep this one because we could dive into this one more later. There's a lot of strategies you can do here. All right, my child has a hard time sitting still and focusing on tasks. Will this be a problem for kindergarten? If you have a great designed learning environment, it won't be a problem because kids this young should not be expected to sit still and attend to group instruction. So this is one of the places where our society has gotten it wrong. And it's not your kid's fault. I would say one of the levers you can push on is talking to your kindergarten teacher about this, right? We know, for example, that early learning environments, preschool through kindergarten, disproportionately punish boys versus girls. Because in the environment, you want kids to sit still, play nice, behave. Girls have a lot easier time with that. So we know already that there are sexist outcomes and behavioral discipline by gender in preschool and kindergarten. And I don't want to live in a society like that, right? I want all kids to get to be who they are. So I would say one of the things to do is to work directly with your kindergarten teacher and say, look, I want my kid to have a great time in kindergarten. I don't really think it's appropriate that they're sitting still and listening to group instruction for several hours per day. Is there something that we can do about that? Work with your kid's teacher, because I would say that that's probably a good first step, the teacher, the administrator, versus trying to squelch your kid. Again, we can go into this for hours, but something that early educators don't know about is that we even see some of these effect sizes for academic preschool flipping, meaning the benefit that they get in numeracy and literacy flips in some of these randomized controlled trials. We don't fully understand why, but the reason might have something to do with putting kids in an inappropriate environment early on. Totally not saying that preschool is inappropriate. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that probably sitting still, group instruction, discipline like that, group, at this earliest stage, those components are maybe not the way to go. And finally, my child doesn't react well to a change in routine. How do I prepare them for the unknown? In everything in nature, there's a distribution, right? So if you take a variable like height, there's the shortest kid in the distribution, there's the tallest kid, and the distribution is going to look like this, with most kids in the middle, right? And the same goes for this, like responding well to change. We could call responding well to change a variable. And some kids respond great to change, and other kids respond terrible to change. And most are somewhere in the middle. And for the ones who really have struggle responding to change, that is a really tough spot to be in. It will take your kid longer to transition to being in school. It will. One of the things you can do, as I mentioned earlier, is to prepare them by doing rituals at home where you're playing school. But another one, and this might surprise you, right? Another one is just spending lots of quality time with your kid. You're probably not going to see this. You search Google and go down 10 pages and you're not going to see this point of advice. Because I'm not do these 3 tips kind of guy. I'm a social scientist. But here's the tip. Get out into nature with your kid before school starts. Or if they really love swimming, go to your community pool. Spend a lot of time in the pool, day after day. Why do I advise this? Because what you're doing is you're building up this big well to draw on of quality time with you so that they're happy, they are going into school with happy memories, they feel a nice, strong bond with you before school starts. Do that in addition to the playing pretend school, and that's going to help ease the transition. The other thing I should mention is that if your kid is really quite far on that end of the spectrum of really disliking change, to tap into the school resources, because there are resources that many schools have for kids who struggle in this way. Do we have more questions here? All right, thanks so much. Another sip of water. Tell me in the comments, can you still hear my voice, or am I just totally scratchy now? I can barely hear myself right now. We're gonna get through it. Let's do it. Can you suggest resources for teaching kids about empathy and kindness? Yes, I can. That's great. This is a wonderful question. Actually, one of my colleagues at UC Irvine developed a card game, which is an empathy game that you can get at any big box online store. So what I would recommend to you, first, you don't have to spend money on this. Go to your local library, ask the librarian, do you have books or games on teaching kindness and empathy? That's a good first step. If you like what you got, great, stick with that. If they don't have the resources, you want to go further, go ahead and look for these resources at your local toy store or on your online store. Because actually there have been a development of some nice tools for teaching these kinds of things. The one I'm thinking of, it is a card game. It has pictures and text. And essentially, as you progress through the game, it's about identifying the feelings of other people and responding in kind. So yeah, games exist and you should check them out. Also, if you're a TV watching family, I might recommend tapping into some of the TV shows that you might watch together. The number one by far is Bluey. Bluey is about play. It's about that social emotional development component. So that's another one I might recommend that you watch together. And if your kids are anything like my kids, as soon as they watch an episode, they want to play like they were in that episode. Okay, how do I encourage problem-solving skills at this young age? You know, they say nature is a great teacher. And one of the most enjoyable and also easiest things you could do is to get out in nature and give your kids a very simple challenge. So if they want a really simple one, it could be to collect a bunch of leaves, Next, they might hunt for a roly-poly, go look for a roly-poly. The next, build a house for the roly-poly you found. So by creating a challenge, just outside, at a park, in nature, if you have access to that, what you're doing is you're encouraging a bunch of things. First of all, you're giving them a very concrete goal, and by being not in your house, you're removing a lot of the distractions, right? Concrete goal in a setting where you can attack that goal. And then also, you're encouraging them to keep going until they solve the problem. Great, you made a house for your roly-poly. Can you make a bigger house? Can you make a longer house? Or can you make a taller house? Can you make a house with sticks? So think of something really simple that you can do away from distractions together as a family outside. Start from there and really encourage your child to stick with it, following their own curiosity. All right, let's make this one the last one for today. Is that all right? All right, last one for today. What key emotional and social milestones should my kid be reaching at this age? That is a great question. So I want to answer this question, but at the same time, I don't want to raise any alarm bells, right? So your child should be able to make eye contact. They should be able to listen while you're speaking, hear what you're saying, and respond back. They should be able to recognize emotional states of other people to a degree, if you're happy or sad or so on. I know that our 4-year-old is very good at this because she'll often stand up between my wife and I and say, "Stop squabbling, stop squabbling." And I'm like, how did she pick up on that? Like the very slightest change in the tone of voice. So they should be able to do those things. As for taking turns, I wouldn't worry about that. Taking turns is a very socially contextualized thing. If you have one kid at home, maybe they've never really been in the environment where they have to take turns. So I wouldn't worry about that one too much. That's something that they will learn, and you could practice it at home, but it's something they will learn when they get into another context. Also, as I shared last week, kids behave massively differently from context to context. So don't be surprised if your kid turns into a totally different person in the classroom than they are at home. It's a thing, it happens. So mostly I would say the key emotional and social milestones are things like eye contact, reading facial expressions, reading emotions, being able to verbally and bodily communicate with you and vice versa. Those are the main ones I would say. But then again, don't be too concerned about that because at this stage, development is sensitive, and I wouldn't be too concerned about something like a delay at this point. Okay, so that's all the time that we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us. I loved having all of you here, and we can't wait to see you at the next one. If you have any other questions or comments, or would like to check out more from the ABCmouse team and learn about when the next one is happening, visit our Instagram or TikTok using @ABCmouse. Again, that's @ABCmouse on Instagram or TikTok. You can also send us an email with your questions to webinar@abcmouse.com. I believe the links are below. Thank you so much, and we will see you next time.